My wife's family thought I was only after her because of their wealth. What they didn't know was that one of my shell companies was their biggest customer. They disowned their daughter because she insisted on marrying me instead of the man the family wanted. So we left, but what happened next was rather unbelievable. Let me tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to James Kane from Ohio. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I never wanted to be known for my money. Maybe it was growing up on food stamps and boiled rice, watching my mom scrub motel toilets and my dad disappear for weeks driving rigs. Maybe it was the shame I carried for years. How poverty can make a man feel invisible. When I finally made my money, I did it quietly. No lavish cars, no magazine covers. Just layers of shell companies, LLCs with generic names, and trust in the anonymity I'd earned. I liked it that way. I liked being the guy no one saw coming. I met Elena in the most unassuming place, a university fundraiser for a literacy nonprofit. She was there because her family sat on the board, all pearls and posture. I was there because I'd quietly donated a new library wing through one of my fronts. She was sharp, funny, and surprisingly grounded for someone born into money. She laughed too loud, challenged my opinions, and asked me questions like she actually cared about the answers. I liked her instantly. More than that, I trusted her. That scared me. We dated for over a year before I proposed. It wasn't some over-the-top gesture with drones and champagne towers. It was just us on a hike overlooking the valley, her hands dirty from scrambling up a ridge, her hair a mess from the wind. I pulled out a ring I'd been carrying for weeks, scared out of my mind. When she said yes, she cried. I did too, though I'd never admit it to anyone but her. The storm came quickly after. Her family, the Cartwrights, weren't just wealthy. They were the kind of wealthy that walked into a room like they owned the floor beneath your feet. Her father, Frederick, made his fortune in logistics and distribution, building an empire off the back of cheap labor and ruthless efficiency. Her mother, Diane, came from old banking money and made a show of pretending she didn't enjoy the power that came with it. From the moment they met me, they assumed I was chasing a payout. He's charming, her mother told Elena, but he's clearly after something. Her father didn't mince words. You're marrying down, Elena. You have no idea what that will do to your future. To our name. I stood there, holding her hand while they said those things, pretending not to flinch. They knew nothing about me. Not the holding company that owned their second-largest distribution partner. Not the fact that I'd once bailed out one of their factories during a union strike under a different corporate name. They didn't know, and I didn't tell them, because it wasn't about showing them who I was. It was about who Elena believed I was. They gave her an ultimatum 2 weeks later. Either she marry Christopher Wells, a clean-cut, Ivy League legacy who just made partner at some venture capital firm, or be cut off completely. We're offering you security, her mother said. You're choosing chaos. She chose me. The night she packed her things and left the estate, she didn't cry. I did. I cried for her. For what it meant to walk away from the only life she'd known. For the way her father slammed the door behind her. For the icy silence that followed us both. But I didn't stop her. I carried her suitcase down the long driveway, holding her hand the whole way. And then I made a quiet phone call the next day to terminate the logistics contract. The one her father's company had relied on for 15 years. The one he never realized was tied to me. Not out of revenge. Just to remind myself that I was never chasing their wealth. I was already sitting on mine. We moved into a small townhouse on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, and a patch of overgrown garden we never quite tamed. Elena decorated it with second-hand furniture and mismatched frames. She called it ours, and I tried not to feel like she was giving up a palace for a hut. But she never complained. Not once. If anything, she seemed lighter without the burden of trying to please people who never really saw her. Still, I could see it in her eyes at night, just before she fell asleep, this quiet ache, a mourning for something unspoken. She missed them. Even when they hurt her, even when they cut her off, she still missed them. That's the curse of family. It doesn't let go just because it lets you go. The ultimatum had been brutal. They summoned her for brunch, Formal, cold, and painfully orchestrated. Frederick sat at the head of the table, navy blazer crisp, voice like steel. "You still have time to rethink this," he said, not looking at me. "I already have," Elena said. Her voice didn't shake. "I'm marrying him." Diane didn't even blink. "Then we'll consider your trust null. Your accounts will be frozen. You will no longer be affiliated with the Cartwright estate." I looked at Elena then, waiting, hoping she'd see some flicker of love in their eyes. But they gave her nothing. Not even a tear. Just the cold efficiency of a business decision. And that's when I saw it, not sadness, but rage, flash across her face. "You're choosing a spreadsheet over your daughter," she said. "You think love is a liability." Frederick folded his napkin with maddening calm. "No, we think prejudgment is." We walked out. No hugs. No apologies. Just the heavy door clicking shut behind us like the final punctuation of a cruel sentence. The next morning, I terminated the contract. I didn't tell Elena, not right away. I needed space to figure out what part of me was acting out of principle and what part was wounded pride. That contract had propped up their West Coast operations for nearly 2 decades. Without it, they'd be forced to renegotiate with newer, riskier partners or cut entire divisions. I knew it would hit hard. That's what made me hesitate, because I didn't want her to think I was punishing them through her. But 3 days later, she asked, "Did you do something?" We were sitting on the porch, sharing coffee in silence. She looked at me the way she always did, straight through the layers I tried to hide behind. "I did," I said. "I pulled the contract." She nodded slowly. "Because of me?" "No," I said, after a long pause. "Because of me." She didn't respond at first. Just stared at the chipped rim of her mug. Then she said, quietly, "Good. I didn't expect that. I know they're my parents," she continued, "but they've never been kind. Not really. Not when it counted. I'm tired of watching them pretend love is conditional, that I have to earn my place in their world." We sat in silence after that. Not out of discomfort, but understanding. Something had shifted in her, something she needed to lose to finally be free. The fallout came slowly. Rumors trickled in. Layoffs at their Santa Ana warehouse. Supply chain delays. Elena's cousin Madison mentioned at a family gathering, one we weren't invited to, that their father had been in meetings for 12 hours straight. She said it with faux concern, the way Cartwrights did everything, polished on the outside, poisoned underneath. Elena never reached out. Not once. But I saw her watching, reading headlines, skimming trade bulletins, connecting dots. 3 months later, the cracks would split wide open. But for now, we waited. Together. It started with whispers. First, a minor article in a logistics trade journal. Something about Cartwright Consolidated losing a major fulfillment partner on the West Coast. I only saw it because I monitor all my company's names through automated alerts. The shell company listed in the article, Noble Track Systems, was mine. Or rather, mine through 3 degrees of separation. Nobody would have traced it unless they were looking very, very hard. Then came the layoffs. Elena heard about them from Madison again, who always called under the guise of checking in. This time, her voice was even breathier, like she didn't want to admit what she was telling us. "Did you hear what happened at the Ontario site? They cut 40 people, just like that. Dad won't say why." Elena listened quietly. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said, emotionless. "You should come by. Mom's birthday is next weekend." "No, Madison," Elena said, cool as glass. "I really shouldn't." The call ended with an awkward silence and a forced "take care." And then the real cracks began to show. Their stock price dipped, slowly at first, then sharply over the course of 2 weeks. Some press releases came out, vague language about strategic restructuring and logistics alignment. The kind of PR speak that hides real panic. I saw the earnings call transcript. Frederick stumbled through it. The polish was gone. So was the confidence. I knew what was happening, of course. Their cost of operations had quietly doubled. They were scrambling to fill the contract they lost with last-minute carriers who charged premium fees and delivered late. Their smaller clients were pulling out. That one contract? It had accounted for 28% of their freight volume. Losing it didn't just hurt them, it made them look unreliable. But I said nothing. Elena did too. Still, I saw the tension creep into her face like slow-growing cracks. She didn't cry or pace the floor or spiral into guilt. But at night, she'd lie awake, eyes open to the ceiling, like she was listening for the sound of something collapsing far away. I held her, sometimes. Other nights, I let her drift alone in that silence. One day, she asked, "Do you think I overreacted?" "To what?" "My father." The ultimatum. Walking away. I sat down beside her, took her hand. "You didn't overreact. You stood up for yourself." She nodded. "I know. I wonder if he regrets it. I wonder if they sit there thinking they did the right thing. Does it matter if they do?" "No," she said. "But sometimes, I wish it did." I knew what she meant. Wanting the apology you know you'll never get. Wishing they'd say we were wrong, not because you need validation, but because it would mean they were capable of change. The final sign came in a leaked memo someone posted anonymously online. Emergency financial review. Internal cuts. Liquidity risk. The press jumped on it. Suddenly, everyone was writing about the fall of the Cartwright empire. Some called it a misstep. Others were less kind, highlighting their nepotism, old-school methods, the way they refused to adapt. One article even called Frederick a dinosaur trying to swim. Elena printed that one out. Didn't say why. Just tucked it in her journal. We never danced on their downfall. But we didn't mourn it either. This wasn't vengeance. It was consequence. They drew the line in the sand. They just never expected it to shift beneath them. The invitation came in the form of a white envelope, slipped into our mailbox with no return address. Elena recognized the handwriting instantly, her father's. Sharp, precise strokes, like every letter had been drawn with a ruler. It wasn't a note. It was a summons. Dinner. Friday, 7 p.m. At the house. She read it twice before setting it down like it might burn through the table. "He wants to talk," she said. "He never says that unless he wants something." I watched her carefully. "You don't have to go." "I know," she said. "But I want to." She wore a navy dress that night. Nothing too formal, nothing too apologetic. I dressed simply, but sharp. I wanted them to remember every second of this. That we had come not crawling, but composed. The Cartwright estate was quieter than I remembered. The hedges hadn't been trimmed. One of the decorative lanterns by the front gate was dark. The little things no one notices until they stop getting done. We walked up the familiar marble steps, Elena's hand tightening around mine as the door opened. Her mother greeted us like nothing had ever happened. "Come in," Diane said, her voice sugar-dipped and brittle. "You both look well." Frederick was waiting in the dining room. No butler, no servants. Just him, sitting at the end of the long table with a glass of bourbon and none of the arrogance he used to wear like armor. He stood when we entered, but not with warmth. Just obligation. "Thank you for coming," he said. "We didn't come for pleasantries," Elena said. "You asked?" We answered. He nodded once and gestured to the seats. We sat. For a long minute, no one spoke. Then, slowly, he reached into a folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. A quarterly loss statement. Elena didn't even look at it. "I know," he said finally, "that I made a mistake. I shouldn't have forced your hand." She said nothing. He turned to me. "And I know now that you weren't who I thought you were." I did some digging. I raised an eyebrow. "That right?" He hesitated. "You own Fairbridge Holdings." There it was. The curtain lifted. I smiled, just barely. "I do. That means Noble Track." "The contract was mine," I finished. "For 15 years. You shook my hand at 3 different fundraisers and never once realized it." His mouth tightened. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't need your approval." "And I still don't?" He looked genuinely shaken, like someone who'd finally realized the house he thought he built with stone had been made of sand all along. "I need your help," he said, voice low. "The business, it's failing. I'm asking you to come in. Help restructure. Reinvest." I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "No." His head snapped up. "What?" "You heard me. I'm offering a clean slate. We'll give you board seats. Equity. We can make this work." I leaned in, calm and cold. "You disowned your daughter because she chose love over pedigree. You insulted me without knowing a thing about me. And now you want me to bail you out because you've run out of options. I'm not interested." Diane's mask cracked. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious." Elena stood up then, slow and steady. "You had a chance to know the man I love," she said. "You chose control. You threw me away like I was some line item you could cross off your balance sheet." Frederick's voice rose, the edge of panic showing. We were protecting you. No, Elena said, tears in her eyes but her voice unwavering. You were protecting your pride. We left. No hugs. No goodbyes. Just the soft echo of our footsteps across that hollow marble floor, and her father's voice calling our names as the door shut behind us. This time, we didn't look back. The silence after that dinner wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air just before a storm breaks, charged with things unsaid, with guilt clawing at the edges, but too late to undo anything. Elena didn't talk much for the next few days. She went through motions, coffee in the morning, short walks in the evening, but I could see the war waging inside her. She hadn't wanted a scene. She hadn't even wanted revenge. What she'd really wanted, though she'd never admit it, was for her father to say he was wrong and mean it. But he hadn't. Not really. He'd come to us out of desperation, not remorse. And that made all the difference. 3 days after the dinner, we saw the headline. Cartwright consolidated edges toward bankruptcy amid investor exodus. Elena read it at the kitchen table, then set her phone face down like it disgusted her. I waited, unsure of whether to speak. Then she said, "He's going to lose everything." I nodded. "Looks that way." She stared out the window, voice flat. "I never thought I'd say this, but I don't feel sorry." "That's not cruelty," I said. "That's clarity." She looked at me, really looked. "You sure we did the right thing?" I didn't answer right away. I stood behind her, rested my hands on her shoulders. "We gave them the chance. You gave them more chances than they deserved. And they didn't just reject us. They threw you away. This isn't about business anymore. It never was." She leaned into me. "They chose their empire over me. And now they're losing both." There were more articles in the days that followed. Layoffs ballooned to the hundreds. Their East Coast offices closed. Suppliers were suing. Someone leaked internal emails, Frederick blaming irrational market behavior and unexpected contract volatility. Not a word about how his own ego had cornered him. I received a call from one of his former VPs, someone who'd jumped ship when the writing was on the wall. He wanted to know if my company might be interested in acquiring some of Cartwright's assets post-liquidation. I thanked him and said we'd pass. I didn't need their pieces. I didn't want to inherit the rot they refused to cut out. One afternoon, Elena got a text. From her mother. 3 words. "He's not well." That was it. No punctuation. No apology. Just a vague call for sympathy. Elena stared at the screen like it was a joke. "Do you think that's real?" she asked me. I shrugged. "Does it change anything?" "No," she whispered. "Not anymore." That night, she deleted her mother's number. I watched her do it, and neither of us said a word. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the final one. We weren't angry anymore. Just done. There's a difference between burning a bridge and realizing the bridge was never built right to begin with. They had expected her to crawl back. They had expected me to break. They had built their world on the assumption that no one would ever dare walk away from it. But we had, and we didn't regret it. Not for a second. We didn't celebrate when the company filed for bankruptcy, though the news came with a strange finality. I read the article in silence, sitting beside Elena on the porch while the late afternoon sun stretched shadows across the floorboards. The Cartwright name, the one they'd guarded so fiercely, was now dragged across headlines as a cautionary tale. Legacy crumbles. A house built on ego. Too big to see the fall. It didn't bring satisfaction. Only a deep, quiet stillness. Elena folded the newspaper without saying a word and placed it in the recycling bin. Just like that. Like she was discarding the last artifact of a past that no longer held her. "Does it feel over to you?" she asked me that evening, her head resting on my chest. I thought about it for a while. I think it was over the moment we walked away. Everything since then, that was just the echo. She nodded. "I don't miss them. Not really. I miss what I thought they could be." That line stuck with me. Because that was it, wasn't it? The grief wasn't for the loss of a family. It was for the fantasy, the hope that one day they'd change, that they'd choose her. But when people show you who they are, and then keep showing you, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself, is believe them. The call stopped. The text stopped. Even Madison fell silent. We heard that Frederick had moved into a smaller home upstate. Rumors swirled that he was ill, stress-related, maybe heart. We didn't follow up. We didn't ask. The last time someone from that family reached out was when Diane sent a long-winded email detailing everything they'd sacrificed and how family should find its way back together. Elena didn't respond. She printed the email, folded it in half, and burned it in the kitchen sink. Watch the flames eat the ink. No more apologies for protecting my peace, she said. That line became her compass. We didn't build a life fueled by resentment. We built one rooted in respect. Our townhouse grew warmer with time. We invested in a small vineyard together, something Elena had always dreamed of. I took on fewer contracts. We focused on things that mattered, things that lasted. Some nights, we'd still talk about the past, not out of bitterness, but to remember how far we'd come. I used to think boundaries were walls, Elena said one evening as we watched the sun dip below the vines. They are, I replied. But sometimes you need a wall. Not to keep people out, but to keep yourself from being dragged back in. She smiled. I like our wall. We didn't win by destroying them. We won by refusing to let their choices define our future. And in that choice, we found something they never truly understood: freedom. If you found yourself caught up in the emotion and complexity of this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who appreciates powerful narratives about love, loyalty, and standing firm in your boundaries. Your support helps us bring more of these real, resonant stories to life. See you soon in the next one.